Fiona. Welcome to Spark TV.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. We've already just started diving into stories before we hit record. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be such a good chat. Let's start out by telling everyone who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so good. I am Fee. I'm the CEO of the Flourish Journey. The Flourish Journey is an organization that works with young teenage girls in high schools, and we work to build their resilience, empowerment, and connection so that they can go on and flourish in their life with the tools that they need to, yeah, really be flourishing in life rather than just surviving.
Well, this sounds amazing already because nothing like the experience when I was in school.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
But so then what was the inspiration for starting this? Because this is hugely impactful.
Yeah, so good. So I didn't found the organization, but in saying that, I have been here since the very first workshop. I was a volunteer facilitator on our very first workshop, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
I started in 2018. And basically, as you just mentioned, like I wish I had this in high school, or my high school experience was had so many challenges and these kind of things. That's how Ashani, our founder, that's why she founded the organization, because there were so many challenges that she, I guess, thought about and reflected on after she left high school and was like, why are there no conversations? Why are there no safe spaces for teenage girls to explore who they are, to explore what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship, not an unhealthy relationship, and really just come together and realize that we're actually not going, like we're actually going through the same thing, a lot of us, and we're not alone.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like Ashani reflecting on her high school experience as to why she started it. But I think every single person that we talk to about Flourish and all of our incredible, like we've got an amazing bunch of facilitators. It's like 20 facilitators that go out and deliver the programs. And every one of us that are involved in this program have our own version of that story.
Mm.
From when I was in high school, I was the sporty chick who hung out with the guys and felt really comfortable. But then if you put me in a space with the girls, I felt like I had to change myself to fit in. I never felt like I fully fit in. I never felt like anyone understood who I was. And at the time, probably had anxiety, but didn't have a language around what anxiety actually was. And it wasn't until we kind of left high school that we started to understand and unravel those kind of things. So I guess we exist so that teenage girls have the opportunity of having those conversations when they are young, so they don't have to get to being 30 like I am and dealing with my anxiety at the peak that it was after high school because I didn't know.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, as you've been talking, I've been reflecting on my high school experience.
Yeah.
And so I went to an all-girls school, and I know I see your face like, oh God, even worse.
It's a whole thing.
It is totally. And
A whole thing.
I also never felt like I fit in. I kind of was a bit of more of the roamer. Like I went from group
Yeah.
to group and kind of just hung out with anybody. But as a result, never felt like I really belonged anywhere. And I hated school as well. Like I kind of knew what I wanted to do already. So I couldn't understand why I had to go through all of these years
Yeah.
of all of these subjects that I wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
and it was just wild. Like I remember just crying in the car to my mum, like going, what is this? Like, I just couldn't understand high school. Like, it was just
Yeah.
such a wild place. So the fact that you're, I guess, opening up these spaces and having these conversations where when it's a really rough time in girls' life, I think that it's just incredible.
I think it's also like so interesting. And I'm assuming you're a similar age to I am. So
I'm a little bit
hey, this
older,
is
actually. You said 30. I'm about 39 now. I'm like,
love
oh
it.
God, it's Botox time.
I love it. I would have said, yeah, I would have said same. But I think I feel like I've just lost my train of thought where I was going
Oh my
because
God,
I
no.
got so distracted.
That's
We
this
love.
podcast. That's this podcast in a nutshell. Everyone's
So
just like
good.
on a rant, on a train of thought. But yeah, so we were saying, the all girls high school
Oh,
experience. Yeah.
yes. Love it. It's back. Um, I was gonna say, I feel like me being 30, I think of my high school experience when there was no social media, or it was like the super early stages, I
Yeah.
think, when I like there was definitely MySpace, but Facebook
Yes.
come in and
Oh,
Instagram has just come
MySpace.
in. Oh my gosh, that's a throwback. But I feel like it's just such a different world what the young people go through now versus what I went through. And yet there's some similarities that we went through. And
Mm,
the overall piece of like, I feel like I have to belong and I feel like I don't fit in. And I feel like no one actually understands who I am because I don't understand who I am. And I think that's
yeah.
the piece that we get to start introducing the girls to. It's like, who the hell are you? Like, who do you want to be? What are your values? What are your strengths? Like, have you ever actually checked in to be like, how am I really going?
Yeah.
And having the tools to do that because it's like such a big question. But yeah, a lot of them don't actually know how, where to start. So that's like we kind of come in and we plant the seeds of thought for them to think about, whether it be that day or a year later or 3 years down the track. And they're like, oh, yeah, I remember that. We did that with Flourish and it helped. And so now I can implement it.
I just think it's so cool. It's so funny that you're saying this because so literally I had like an epiphany yesterday about my life. And I was like, wow, I'm nearly 40 and I'm only just figuring out who I am and what I want to
Yeah.
do with my life. And
Yeah.
to that point, though, I've only through business ownership have I learnt to try and figure out who I am in air quotes, if anyone's just listening.
Mm,
But that idea to actually ask someone or have someone ask of themselves what their values are, what they care about, like expose them to different conversations. And I mean, I want to talk about the event you just hosted as well, because exposing young women to different career paths and helping
yeah.
them
Yeah.
just this idea of like having them think critically. I'm
Mm,
like, I'm only just learning that now. So
yeah.
that being able to do that at such a young age is just so awesome. And to your point about social media, yes, it didn't exist when I was in high school. The only thing that existed was like, chat, like
Yes.
Messenger.
What was it,
And
MSN?
yeah, MSN Messenger and ICQ if you're really old. My husband, who's a little bit older again, he talks about one. I was like, oh, I'm too young to know what that one
Yeah, I
is.
was like, I don't know any
Yeah.
others. I feel like MSN is the first one
The
that I
one,
think
yeah.
of.
But I even think about that. Like, so
Yeah.
that I guess was this early time of internet. And even that you were like waiting on boys to talk to you and all of this stuff. And it's like, even that was stressful. Can you imagine being a young woman now and like the comparison that would go on social media and the bullying that happens? Like, I just cannot fathom being in high school today.
No, and I think from the stories that we hear from the young girls, like they are struggling and they are very much unsure of how to move forward in a positive
Mhm.
way. Like that if at the end of last year, if I was to say two words about teenage girls and how they found it was hopelessness and powerlessness. And that
Oh
is
my God.
terrifying. Like that is terrifying for so many young girls. And this is like we're as an organization, we've now worked with like 25,000 teenage girls. Like it's
Wow.
amazing and so special. But being able to sit in spaces and hear them and to feel that energy of this like heaviness
Yeah.
just with all that's going on in the world, all that's going on that they're seeing. But like the one thing that I really get from teenagers is they think so wide. Like they see what's happening overseas with the wars and they take it on. And they see the like environmental climate change and they see that the future that they're gonna have to be the ones that fix it. They see the gender-based violence stats and all of this like accumulates and there's just heaviness. So I think one of the things that we try and do as much as we possibly can is like, yeah, acknowledge that there's so many things in life that they're not going to be able to control. And there's so many pressures and expectations, as you said. And at the same time, be like, okay, what are the pieces that I can control? Like, if there's so many things in my life that
Mhm.
I'm never going to be able to control, and in society, and expectations, and pressures, and all of these different things, but what can we actually get them, even if it's like one thing how do we like help that young girl get the power back? And to be fair, like I need that tool and we use that tool. I use that tool so often because I get so overwhelmed and I'm like, oh, I want to change the world. And then it's like, how the hell do you do that? And just being
Yeah.
like, okay, what's the one thing that I can start with? So yeah, I feel like there are so many pressures and overwhelming things that they have to go through. But
Mm.
how do we yeah, how do we start to unwind and bring that kind of, and part of the event that we did, it's all about girl spirit. Like, how do we bring the energy and play of being a girl and girlhood? Because it's kind of conditioned out of us as adults, which is so sad.
Totally. It's I mean, well, firstly, I want to put a pin in that tip because I feel like that's so good for women in business as well. Like that idea
100%.
that you're overwhelmed, too much to do, and go, okay, what is one thing that I can control?
Yeah.
What is one thing that I can focus on and eliminate the rest of the noise? I
Yeah.
find that so helpful, like, especially, in our never ending to do lists, going, right, let's just put, I always say to people, if you have a to do list a mile long, put one thing on a post-it note and then turn the to-do list over. And the only
Oh,
thing
I
you're
love
focused on is the one thing on the post-it note.
that. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it is wild. And it's interesting, as you were saying, about all of the things that they've got going on, like the war and the stats
Mm.
and this. I'm like, again, kind of goes back to the fact we didn't have social media. So I feel like I was quite sheltered as a
Mm.
young woman. I didn't know about all of these things going on in the world because, yeah, it's just if you go online today, you are just bombarded with problems
Yeah. And
and
there's
the horrific state of the world.
And there's no, and I think like obviously there's a lot happening in the space of social media for young people
Mm,
at the moment, and a lot of push to delay the age that they can get onto social media and those kind of things, which is interesting, and it could be a positive, and it also could be the flip side. And to be honest, like teenagers, if they're going to do something, they're going to get around it. It's not going to
yeah,
stop them.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
one way to like not make this happen is so tell teenagers they can't use
yeah.
social media. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, literally, because if you tell them not to do it, they're going to do it, and they're going to want it
Exactly.
even more. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that awareness piece of like what is actually happening in the world, it's like an amazing thing and like a struggle at the same time, because
Yeah.
as you said, they're aware of so much more than I like agreed I was when I was in high
Mm,
school. But at the same time, they're carrying that with them and they don't have the
yeah.
tools to let that go and have the tools to realize, okay, what of this is in my control? Or what of this do I need to take with me and learn from?
Mm,
But what is the like heap of stuff that I could actually just leave? And I think that's where the like anxiety statistics, the depression, the self-harming, eating disorders, like this, the statistics around that for teenage girls is so high because they
mm,
don't have the tools in how to let it go,
yeah.
how to combat it, and how to actually like look after themselves in the process.
This is so awesome. So, do you essentially go into schools and run these as set programs?
Yeah, so we've got our facilitators who will go into a group. There'll be, say, like 3 facilitators for a group of 35 girls, up to 35 girls. And we've got 3 levels. Level one's all about that self-awareness piece. So who am I? What are my values? What are my strengths? How can I check in with myself? And through that, like, how do I share about how I'm really going? Then we go into level two, and like this one's so like they're all powerful. I love them all, but like this one is so vital at the moment. It's all about relationships and really having conversations about what is a healthy relationship, what's an unhealthy relationship, how do
Yes.
I set boundaries, how do I say no, how do I feel empowered using my voice,
Can
which
you
is
please roll that out for like older people as well?
oh my gosh, but seriously, like I did a workshop, I delivered a workshop recently, semi-recently, and this young girl, we were doing kind of like splitting the list of like what's healthy and what's unhealthy. And we were looking at the unhealthy list, and she goes to me, Fee, can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah, of course, what's up? She's like, oh, I didn't realize the relationship I'm in at the moment is really unhealthy. This is a
Wow.
year 10
I just
girl.
got goosebumps. Oh my God. Yes.
This is a
Wow.
year 10 girl, and she literally was like, I didn't realize what was happening was unhealthy. I didn't realize just continuously being asked about sex and like you saying no and no and no and then eventually saying yes, like that's not okay. Like
Yeah.
this is a year 10 student. And so I think like we do have lots of conversations about the healthy side, because I think again, it's so like so heavy to talk about the unhealthy side and what happens if and those kind of
Mm,
things. And yes, that's there, but how do we actually focus on, okay, well, if I don't want that, what can I do? How do I create a healthy relationship? What does that mean for me and myself? What does it mean for the people around me? and really focusing on that uplift and that empowerment and the like healthy side rather than just focusing on the negative, which has
Yeah.
been a really interesting shift that we've done this year, and it's been really powerful. Um, and then our level 3 is all about self-leadership. So how do I show up in the world? Do I want, like, if I want to make change in some area, how do I do that? How do I have agency in my life and my community, and how do I give back? So they're kind of like our 3 levels, and then we do some keynotes and a whole heap of other things that we're developing and always learning and growing, and as
That is
anyone
so
in
cool.
business.
I love it. And how is it? So then how is it funded? Did the schools pay for it or government
Yeah.
funded? Like, how does it actually work?
So we have been set up, and we're technically a charity, but at the
Yeah.
same time we're more social enterprise, which we took a long time to get DGR status. And so basically DGR status allows us to get donations, for those who don't know.
Yeah.
And it took us 3 years or so to actually get set up with DGR status, which meant we couldn't receive any donations. So
Um,
we had to get set up as like fee for service model, which meant schools pay for our programs and we deliver the programs, which is
yeah.
still the case now. But it's a really big positive, because at the end of the day, we've got this like model that's semi self-sustainable. We still are looking for donations, and always as a charity looking to grow and bring in those donations. But we're about 65-70% that comes in through fee for service,
Mhm.
which for a charity is very uncommon. So yeah, that's how
I
we.
think that's awesome. And it's really interesting. I can just imagine like parents of the children whose lives you've impacted donating because it's like more people need to know about this.
Yeah, and that's kind of the phase that we're in at the moment, where we've been around since 2018, but obviously COVID in there kind of like was wild.
Yeah.
Um, as with everyone. And then the last couple of years has kind of like taken off a bit, but we haven't necessarily had the infrastructure internally to really like push out and market and share what we're doing. And I feel like we're just at that stage now where we've kind of built our team, we've got our programs, everything's ready to go now. It's like, okay, cool, let's go and let's push this out. So I feel like we're in a phase of real growth, and hoping to bring people into the circle more and bring
Yeah.
people into the journey, so that, yeah, whether it be parents or whether it be educators or whether it be just people who are really passionate about teenage girls or wanting to make a difference in mental health, and really start to bring them into the loop. And so I feel like we're at a really exciting stage. It's also a bit scary and daunting, but we're at an exciting stage where we need to grow, and we need to grow within the organization. And like, I think we have the means to do that, and we've got the product, but yeah, it's a challenging, exciting phase.
I love it. And I mean, you're right. It just sounds like you are like on the precipice and everything is like leading to this point. I just think it's so cool. So what's your strategy going to be to grow, like to get the word out there? What are you planning?
Love that. Few
Everything.
things. One, the first thing that we're doing, and I guess the biggest piece of our puzzle is the schools, and being able to like reach out to more schools and put in a marketing kind of strategy, I guess, through how do we
Mm,
reach out to schools. A lot of that for us, we found, has been through like, okay, we need to go to a conference and we need to have an opportunity to speak on behalf of
mm,
teenage girls, and share, in order for people to really hear about us. So a lot of our growth has been pretty much word of mouth until now. And now we're at the point of being like, okay, cool, that needs to change,
yep.
which is great. And then the other piece is this like advocacy piece that we have, and the opportunity we have to really platform the voices of teenage girls and really start to share. We're hosting our first ever, well, I say first ever event because we've done like little ones, but this is like our first ever big event that we're hosting next Thursday night, which is, I don't know when the podcast is coming out, but
I have no idea either.
next
Cool.
next Thursday night,
Yeah.
10th of October, to celebrate International Day of the Girl. And
Cool.
yeah, it's going to be heaps of fun. We've got a US author who has just written a book. If you have teenage girls in your life, read this book. It's called Underestimated: The Wisdom and Power of Teenage Girls.
Oh, cool. I
And
want to read that. Yeah.
it is literally all that we do, and we just do it on the ground, and it's phenomenal. So we've got her zooming in to kind of be interviewed, and then we're doing an interview panel with Helen Lewitton, who's our clinical psych, um, and then some young girls as well. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of our hope of a springboard into an opportunity to bring in corporate partners, to bring in like donors and like build those relationships, and also have schools there to continue to build those relationships. But I think, yeah, in terms of strategy, like we're figuring out on the fly.
I love it. I mean, look, everything that you're saying sounds totally spot on.
Okay, good.
Obviously this, yeah, I mean, you know it already. But look, obviously going through the schools, obviously the events, obviously the advocacy piece. I mean, I think you have it nailed. This is such an exciting time for you. What do
Yeah.
you think has been the biggest challenge so far? So since you said 2018. What do you think's been one of the biggest challenges that the business has gone through?
I think one of our big challenges, and like we're going through it again at the moment, is our facilitators are all casual staff members.
Ah, yep.
And that is phenomenal because it means that they're flexible. And at the same time, it means that when they start to look for full-time work and part-time work, we can't offer them that at the moment.
Mm.
And so it often feels like we're kind of on this cycle of like training up facilitators, they get awesome, and then it's like, oh, they leave and they go and flourish in whatever part that they do, which is awesome for them. But it's also a really challenge for a big challenge for us. So one of the things we're thinking about is like, okay, what does the model look like, and how can we keep the facilitators if we can't necessarily like employ them in a full-time role, but what are the other options that we can do? So that's always been a really big challenge.
Mm.
And because our facilitators are our product, we have to have high quality. So we put a lot of money that goes into our facilitation training. And so then it's hard when they leave and we're like, oh, okay, start from scratch.
Oh
Um,
my.
so I think that's a really big challenge, and one that we're going through again at the moment. And then I think the other thing, one of the challenges for me, and I'm sure that there's plenty of women on here, like me as a young woman trying to raise money for an organization and trying to be the face of an organization, and to have people back financially is really hard. And I'm only just figuring that out now, that there is actually an impact of being a young woman in business who has big dreams and needs like funding and support. And the yeah, the lack of being taken seriously or being taken in a way that there's belief and like confidence behind the organization. It's really interesting. And I haven't nailed it. And I don't, so any tips is great while I'm on here.
I
But yeah,
mean,
that's a
it's
big
so
challenge.
frustrating, isn't it? I think it was really, so it's interesting. So yesterday I was on LinkedIn, and there's just been this new LinkedIn report done about startups, and there's like one female led startup on there, and the way the video was positioned was that Australia has a lack of female founders, and I was like,
Oh,
bullshit. There
mate.
are plenty of female founders. The problem is backing the female founders,
Yeah.
like investing in them. The federal government just closed down the Boosting Female Founders grant, all of this stuff. And I was like, it's just so infuriating because all of the blame or problem solving just gets pushed back to women. So they go, there aren't enough women starting businesses and there aren't enough women taking risks. I was like, that's bullshit. There are plenty of those things going
Yeah.
on. It's the investors who aren't stepping up and taking the risk and betting on a woman in business.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
you're right, like we do get disproportionately asked, you know, questions that are sexist, and our legitness is
Yeah.
questioned, and it is infuriating. Guys just don't get the level of criticism that women do when it comes to capital raising, especially. I
Yeah, and
mean,
even like even partnerships, like I've noticed it even in the space of partnerships, and like we've worked alongside another men's organization who have been around longer than us, but like in a very similar field and doing similar things.
mm,
And yeah, it's really interesting to be like, it's a very polar opposite support that we end up getting. And like we are further behind in terms of time, but also I think there's something to play for, yeah, being a young woman and running an organization and having a dream and having a vision, but also needing that support financially and in partnerships or however it might look, has been a really interesting, yeah, interesting challenge that I hadn't expected to this extent.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the infuriating part of it is it becomes a numbers game.
Mm.
So women, I find, just have to pitch so much more than
Yeah.
guys do to get somewhat of the same level of return. So it's
Mm.
not, there's literally nothing you're doing wrong. It is the state of the world we live in. And the only solution is to just keep going
Keep
and go
going.
harder. I
Yeah.
know, which is really infuriating. I wish there was an actual answer. Um,
Yeah.
but I think, like, while we all work on changing the world, like,
Mm.
women need funding now and have to get things done. So I'm like, the only solution is to just keep knocking down doors until you get it. So
And
don't
also
give up. It's absolutely going to happen.
and also that sustainability of like of women as well, I think is a really interesting one. And
Yeah.
the levels of burnout, and like I know I've experienced it, and yeah, just having such passion and like, and I think especially as a woman, like so deeply connected to wanting to make a difference. And like I see the girls that I went to gymnastics with and had eating disorders, and they should like, I wish they had this, and I wish I had this program so that I knew how to help them, because I didn't, and I didn't even know what I was saying wasn't helpful. And at the end of the day, like we're so passionate, we care so much as women, that sometimes it's at our detriment. A lot of the time I feel like it's at our detriment.
Well, I mean, I think it's our superpower. Like, and I think
Right.
this is the missed opportunity for investors and partners,
Yeah.
is that women tend to build businesses that are impactful. Like,
Yes.
so because we are so not emotional is the wrong word, empathetic
Empathetic.
is the word. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll get in
Yes.
trouble for that. We are so empathetic, and we do think about our communities. We do
Yeah.
think about bettering society.
Yeah.
So we tend to build businesses, even if it's not directly impactful. Women tend to donate more, set aside a portion of their profits more, all of that kind of stuff. So
Mm.
backing female founders is actually for the betterment of society as well, which is why, again, my mind boggles as to why there isn't more money going in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and and because we have that level of passion and drive, they are more successful. They make more money as a business. Like it's interesting because that's what the stats show. Like, the
Yeah.
evidence is so clear. We should be backing more women.
Yes, we should. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the challenges I think that I'm facing.
Yeah, and look, and you're not alone in that challenge. It is
Yeah.
so infuriating, and why we exist at Spark,
Mm.
that's
Uh,
the mission that we're on as well. And all I say to people is, we'll keep on the changing of the world thing. You keep pushing for your business to be
yeah.
a success. Oh my God,
I
I
love
love
it.
it so much. We could talk all day, but I always love to wrap up these podcasts with one last piece of advice. So, reflecting on your time in business, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to another woman on her journey?
Mm. I think one of the things that I love that we do at Flourish, we are so heart led, and it
Mm,
is all about, yeah, it's all about the mission, but it's all about slowing down enough in ourselves and slowing down enough as an organization to stay really connected to the mission. And I think the times where I get burnt out or the times that I get exhausted or whatever, it's because I'm so far from the heart of what we do. And sometimes I just need that little reminder to come back to like, why am I here and what's the impact? When I like see it for sure, but actually feeling it makes a big difference. So I think, yeah, that's something I learned from our incredible founder, and she does that in every single day that she is around and doing what she does. And um, that's something that I need to keep reminding myself of as well.
I love it. It is so easy to get overwhelmed and burnt out, especially in this day and age of like you have to be everywhere and do everything. I
Mm,
love that idea of just giving ourselves that space to reconnect with our heart and our purpose and why we're doing what we're doing.
yeah, I think that why piece is so important because ultimately, like, if we lose that, then what's the point?
I love it. I love it so much. Fee, you are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom on the Spark TV. It's been fabulous to have you.
Thank you so much.